What's up, everyone? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we are back with another retro review. And this was one we stewed on for a bit just because there's a little bit of controversy with it. And believe me, we'll get to it.
Yes, we will not leave it out.
This is a favorite of mine. And I know tons of people get into this album and this band.
And it's a favorite of mine. Ugh.
So we're going to go over Disma's lone full-length album, Towards the Megalith. This came out in 2011 on Profound Lore Records. And a little bit of history here. The band formed in 2005 in New Jersey. This actually featured ex-members of Incantation. One Craig Pillard on vocals, Bill Venner on guitars, who was a live member of Incantation, as well as ex-Funebrarum drummer Sean Eldridge and ex-Methadrone bassist Randy Stokes, which Methadrone was another side project of Craig Pillard's, and other guitarist Daryl Kahan, who is the current vocalist of Funebrarum. Now, these guys pretty much came together courtesy of Bill Venner wanting to form a massive, ugly death metal band, and believe me, they did. They put out the Vault of Membros demo in 2009, and then did a split with the band Winter Wolf in 2011, and this was all before getting signed to Profound Lore Records and releasing this absolutely monstrous album. This might be one of the heaviest albums I've ever listened to, and believe me, I've listened to a lot of heavy albums, but there's something about this album.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking that earlier too. Like, I feel like we listen to a lot of really heavy music, and I feel like we, you know, at times say, like, that might be the heaviest thing I've ever heard. This record, it's in its own separate game of, like, death metal and death doom. Like, this is separate from a lot of things.
Opening track, Chaos Apparition. I swear, when that guitar comes in, it is heavy enough to crack a human skull. Maybe a bull skull, too. I don't know. A thick skull.
And it wastes no time whatsoever. Like, there's no intro, there's no creepy noises, there's no water dripping. It's just, bam, heavy, snarling, nasty tone.
The production on this album is damn near perfect for what they were going for, which is insanely heavy. The guitars almost have like kind of an HM2 kind of snarl to them, but it's low, it's sludgy, it's thick.
It's so low that it sounds like the strings are literally hanging off the guitar. Like, it's so... Oh my god.
But it doesn't overpower the bass, which is really interesting because the bass is super clear on here, and believe me, when that thing fuzzes out, you'll know. Namely, the opening to the track, Vault of Membros, starts off with a breakdown with just this ultra fuzzy bass that is... It's not a warm fuzzy.
No, it's ugly.
It's an ugly fuzzy.
Yep.
The first death doom break you hear in Chaos Apparition, though, which pretty much sets the pace for every death doom break you will hear on this album, which I thought about listing my favorite death doom breaks on this album. I was like, nope, that's like every track.
Yeah,
every
dude,
moment.
You can't, because every song has this. But the one on this, it just, I can't. How many times can you say this album is heavy? And I feel like there aren't words to describe it almost.
It's heavy in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
This album finds so many different ways to just crush you. I mean, it is an oppressive listen, whether it be D-beat stomps, big mid-tempo bolt thrower chugathons, death doom breaks that send you straight to hell.
Yeah.
It's all heavy all the time on here. There's not really a pleasant melody on here. Pleasant for us because we enjoyed the hell out of
right,
this.
because I love this album, but
we're broken.
Yeah, right. We're damaged people.
Yes.
The drums in this album they're like cannons. Every time he hits that snare, it's like a shotgun blast. Just bap. It's so wonderful to hear that kind of great production on a sludgy doom album, because normally it's not what you get.
This is considered just straight death metal, but I'd say this is death doom. There's no way you get away with that many doomy breaks without being death doom.
It is.
It's so filthy, and literally I wrote down, this is the play that riff, but slower and heavier band. This is that album. There are certain breakdowns on here where you think it can't possibly get any heavier. but then it just slows down to a crawl. Like the pit turns into like cold molasses and cement.
It's interesting the way they do these songs because, for the first couple, there's not a lot of faster moments, but then you get more into the record, and there are faster moments, but there's almost like no even tempo. It's either a blast beat or it's drowning in a pit of slowly hardening cement. And the contrast between those two, the way they find to go from one extreme to the other and transition it properly is magic.
Absolutely. It does not lose any momentum in this. This album somehow just continuously gets heavier as it goes on. But in terms of up-tempo moments, they know how to pepper them in, like a nice little pocket of blast beats, a D-beat stomp. Spectral Dominion opens up fast and furious, but of course slows down to a crawl later. You pretty much get the gamut. Everything they do, pretty much in every song, except sort of just rearranged. We haven't pummeled them this way, let's pummel them this way a little bit earlier.
Like in Spectral Dominion, it was the first time that I had written down there aren't words for just how devastating this is. It's a whole feeling. This is absolutely the most depressive thing in all the worst ways possible.
Yeah, this is an album you can feel. And as far as atmosphere, there's not much extra other than the band itself. It's just, they let a chord ring out or just a single note. And just because of the tone of everything and the mix of everything, it feels absolutely gigantic. There's not a tremendous amount of reverb on it, but there is just enough to just fill out every possible sound wave.
Yep. The soundscape is big and rich and full, and they're not heavily reliant on reverb or synth. There is no synth. It's just the perfect amount to make it feel as dark as it does without overwhelming that sense.
And every instrument adds a whole other layer to this nasty mix. Craig Pillard's vocals are particularly low and gurgly, but you get the standard bless and higher shrieks. It's just a cavernous, nasty listen from start to finish. But you still get some interesting dynamics that come in a little bit later. The title track actually has, the syncopated chug to it. It's almost kind of like a rhythm you would hear in maybe a Gatecreeper song. A little bit more kind of hardcore oriented. There are definitely spots in here where, that shift from D-beat to doom reminds me of Autopsy a lot.
There's actually a lot going on in this song. But again, one of the cool things, even though it transitions quite a bit, it doesn't ever feel lost or overly chaotic, or it doesn't make you feel disinterested.
Disoriented.
Maybe disoriented.
Maybe.
But there's so much going on, and it's transitioned so well. There's a great build of emotion here. The build up to that breakdown is executed perfectly. And then going out with those war drums.
It's like somehow they found another way to be heavier than everything else.
It's like the last thing you'd see, so you go to hell, right? And then the last thing you'd see before the gates close and you're hurled into the abyss. It's that last little bit of hope closing.
Very, very visual. One of my favorite things on this entire album is how they isolate riffs as good lead-ins to the next section. Personal favorite on this album, Lost in the Burial Fog.
Yes.
That's been my go-to song on here, just because that song is literally everything you will get on this album in one song. I'm not saying just listen to that song, I'm saying listen to the entire album. But there is an awesome D-beat section where they just lead in with this riff, and it's almost like a warning. That is a warning to the crowd, listen, if you are not ready to potentially get the shit kicked out of you in a pit.
Yeah, you might want to move, step back.
Yep. Back up.
Yep.
Because they're looking for the weak ones. That kid puking blood, he's next.
Yeah, right? The whole time, it's sour lemon face. You can't get away from it.
There are no smiles.
Oh, man.
It's just, I don't know, this album devastates any positive emotion you feel other than just, yes, I'm pissed about, what am I pissed about? I don't know.
Right. Like you ever want to get yourself in a bad mood? Be like, I'm too nice. I need to be angry.
Because you will make the face the entire time. Every time a breakdown comes in, which is frequent, you're just gonna bang your head. You might want to just watch something get destroyed in slow motion on YouTube.
Like, I don't know how they do it. The way it slows down, like, you can feel the emotion kind of drain out of your body, and it gets a little, like, tingly, and you're just like, what?
Of a Past Forlorn, that opening breakdown, and there's sections in there where they just slow it down even more, and somehow it becomes even heavier, just because you shifted the tempo just a little bit.
You know, it's interesting. Today I was having a conversation with another friend who reaches out periodically and says, oh, hey, have you heard this album? And he was promoting something deathcore, I won't go into it. And I said during the conversation, I said, bands that are heavy just to be heavy kind of just doesn't do it for me. Except for Disma. Because they it's not just a breakdown, it's not just some chugs and a blast beat. Like, they really know how to make heavy riffs. They use an incorporation of both chugs and melody just to put forth just awfulness, but in a good way.
I didn't hear the term caveman metal until more recently, mostly associated with bands like Torture Rack, but I think this is caveman metal, and it does kind of sound like it was recorded in a cave too, so that's perfect. But the riffs aren't technical at all. There's some really good melodies on here, but for the most part, these are simple riffs executed to maximum heft.
Yes.
And that is sort of just a beautiful simplicity in that. But it's still within there, you find a lot of cool songwriting dynamics. They know how to keep each song interesting, whether it's just slowing it down and making it even heavier, or peppering in blast beats.
There's memorable points in every song. From the second you turn on this album, it kicks you in the face, till the end of this album, where it kicks you in the face. I've listened to this album quite a bit, and just when songs come on, I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot. Oh, ugh.
This was always fun to revisit, and interesting enough, Jammin John here actually brought this up in a What's John Jammin' forever ago.
Yeah.
And he literally came up to me and was like, dude, have you heard of Disma? I was like, yeah, literally since that album debuted in 2011, I own it. And yeah, it's one of the heaviest things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, right. It was, I was
bug-eyed, like, dude, this album may have changed me a little.
Yeah, there aren't words. There really aren't. There aren't words to describe what this album is. I've never had a beating like that. I just, you don't get, I mean, it's Incantation heavy.
Yeah.
And I mean, rightfully so, it's got ex-members of Incantation, why wouldn't it be? But like, even Incantation, there's the butting heads as far as who is the heaviest.
Oof. This album might be the reason why I know the label Profound Lore. I picked this up forever ago. It was a mutual friend of ours, worked at a record shop, and he said, dude, have you heard this album by Disma? I was like, no. And he said, well, it's got ex-members of Incantation. Give it.
That's you, Nick.
Yep.
I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, even though you told me once, but that's you, Nick.
But yeah, I bought it, I jammed it, and it became one of my favorite albums. Unknowingly, a one-off studio album in terms of a full length.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that. But first, we're going to throw a rating on this, and here comes the rarity.
Yep.
This is a 5-star rating for me. This album is all killer, no filler. It is one of the heaviest albums I've ever listened to, but it is more than just a sonic beatdown.
Yeah.
A lot of bands can do that and create super heavy riffs, but this is well-written songs, not a huge amount of different things going on, but somehow they managed to craft different songs and keep the energy up throughout. The only downside is something we'll get to in a minute, but it's nothing that would affect the music and just the content overall.
Yep.
This album is flat out brilliant, and definitely jam it if you've never heard it. You just need to experience this level of heavy once. So yeah, 5 stars.
Yep.
I said it.
I'm gonna say it too, dude. I don't have a single problem in the world with this album. The only problem I had is when the album ended, and I couldn't hear more. Quite possibly the heaviest thing I think I've ever heard in my entire life, and that's a very bold statement. Nick and I listened to thousands of bands, and from the moment I heard this album, I knew that this was going to be one of my favorite albums, pushing on all time. Like, it's just so good, and Like, I have to stop listening to it sometimes. I have to, because I'll put it on repeat for like a week, a month, you know, and be like, I can't do heavy like this anymore.
I've been listening to this album for 10 years.
If you like heavy death metal and more importantly, death doom and death doom done correctly, there's this band and Incantation.
Put it minutes.
I
mean, there's other bands too.
I mean, there are other bands, but I mean, like when you get down to just a well done, heavy, just pummeling beatdown, that's this album, and I wouldn't change a thing. And it just, the production is perfect. The overall emotive of the album, it's just you're done. You're done. There's no hope. There's no light. The mixture of hefty breakdowns and just haunting, horrific melodies, it all works together so well. It's upsetting that there's only one album, but let's get into this.
Yeah. So, we've been alluding to something here. What happened? Before we get to the big one, they had some lineup changes. Daryl left in 2015 to focus more on Funerarum. Sean also exited, and he was replaced by drummer Craig Smilowski, who was also ex-Incantation and Immolation drummer. Now, he recently left in 2020. Now, they did record an EP, The Graveless Remains, in 2017. And, well, it's time to get down to the elephant in the room, and that would be Craig Pillard. Now, there was a run of bad news with him, unfortunately. He had a project, and I say had, I'm not entirely sure because it might still be active, called Sturmfuhrer, and it is Nazi propaganda. I don't know, it's fucking trash. Fuck Nazis.
Yep.
I'm just gonna come out.
I'm just gonna say it.
And he's not hiding it. There's a big fucking swastika on the CD, and pretty much news publications started getting a hold of it, and because of this association, Disma was dropped off of a lot of bills. Netherlands Death Fest, there was one in Mexico that they were dropped off. Bands were all threatening to leave if they were on the bill because they did not want to be associated with, namely, Craig Pillard. And I get it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to be associated with that shit either. And, you know, that's why this video is controversial, because I do love this album. I think musically,
I love the album, but Craig Pillard's a fucking butthole.
Yeah, dude, that's some bullshit. And, you know, I've heard that, you know, he said it was like a joke and he had changed his ways, but the band remains active, and I believe he was still trying to pursue dates for different festivals, namely like fascist festivals in Italy and such. And I don't see this as a leopard changing its spots here.
Yeah, yeah.
And what is even more of a revelation, and I just found this out, is he's been back in the band since last year. And they are currently working on something new, which I have so many mixed emotions about.
I do too. I
love what they write.
Right. Once again, if you take all that terrible bullshit away, the music is phenomenal. But I mean,
Craig's a giant fuckhole, and he is kind of detrimental to the band because I don't know. I don't know if he has changed. If he has, hey, more power to him. But you got a giant apology tour, and
yeah, no shit.
Because of this, there are going to be venues and festivals that don't want to associate with this act. And before anyone goes crying cancel culture, this is not cancel culture. This is consequence culture. You took a bold stance, and hey, you can do that. Doesn't mean you should. And there are consequences to that shit.
Yep.
You know, that's something I was brought up with. Like, don't run your mouth and not expect to get your ass beat, and don't go complaining about getting your ass beat because you ran your mouth.
Yep.
Same instance right here. You took a hardline stance, whether it was a joke or not. If it was a joke, it was a poor joke, and you kind of shit on the rest of the band that way. And if it wasn't, that's even shittier.
Yeah, man. For real.
And what's even worse is, you know, the band did take a stance. He was removed in 2019, but the fact that he's back, I don't know. I just don't know.
I don't know either.
I know they have a new drummer, and I feel like I should bring that up. He plays in Blasphematory, which is an awesome band. I'm at such a crossroads with this band. I really am. And that sucks. If this band didn't put out anything good, I wouldn't give a shit.
Right.
But because this album is absolutely amazing, bordering on flawless in terms of my subjective opinion.
Yeah, right.
you know, that makes it that much more difficult. And I mean, I don't know. I might get it. I might not. You know, I feel like you have to separate the artist from, you know, the art in some expense, but the whole Nazi thing is something I really draw a line in the sand on.
That is definitely not something we support.
No, it's a fucking garbage philosophy championed by weak-minded people, and I'm not going to back away from any of that shit. So yeah, not necessarily the most happy ending or really an ending for this band, but the future is uncertain, and I don't know. This is just kind of like a tough one because we both really wanted to review this album, but we both knew we couldn't ignore this aspect because it is sort of a big aspect.
Like, even when I brought it up on What's John Jammin', I wanted to...
Because I told him about it.
Yeah, I was like, well, fuck, what do I do now? Because...
I told him not to leave it off because you got to talk about the music.
Yep.
And musically, this is brilliant. And I would still say get this album. But, you know, if you have a hardline stance against that bullshit, you can still enjoy this music and still call it out. You know?
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty much my stance. I've owned this since it debuted. Of course, I didn't know about it then. But I still will jam this album. I still enjoy it. But I do not support any of that fucking bullshit. And hopefully... I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know if there is like a silver lining of this.
Right.
But we'll see. And that's pretty much where we stand. So, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We're also on Patreon, so if you'd like to support us there will be a link below in the description. And, well, we got plenty more reviews coming, and we are selling t-shirts.
We're still kind of foggy on how to do it. However, I do know if you send us an email at thrallsthemetal@gmail.com, we will if you mention shirts, we'll get you taken care of.
Yep. Put it in all caps, and we'll definitely see it, and we'll definitely get you a shirt.
Yep.
So with that, we thank you very much, and we will catch you later.